Hey everyone, Kirk Herbstreit here, and welcome to the EA Sports College Football 25 Sights and Sounds Deep Dive. We gave a little love to every single school in the game.
Okay, that's dope. That's dope.
Experience all kinds of iconic pageantry, from stadium environments to turnover celebrations to mascots.
I'm wondering if the team builder schools, you have the opportunity to set up your own traditions and everything. If so, the question beyond that is, will any of them be unique, or will you just have options to choose from what other schools do? Which, if so, that's cool. You can maybe mix and match them and make your own unique thing. But it'll be something interesting to keep an eye on. Because if I'm doing team builder, I would hope I could get a similar experience.
Players on some teams touch a sign for good luck on their way to the field.
Believe that
Next,
looks
light up
beautiful.
stadium, riding motorcycles. You can experience them all.
Can I please see the play? Can I see a play, please? Okay, definitely good. You know what I mean? Definitely good. We're still waiting on the Dynasty Deep Dive, which I'm expecting really soon. But I guess this is a cool little warm-up. I just had some recruits come in versus Temple. We beat the crap out of Temple 50-14. I hit most of my bonuses and I should sign somebody. I'm expecting to sign somebody. That's why I'm talking fast before it actually pops up. Bam! John Reed, 5-star quarterback, Brent Davis. We just brought in another crop, man. Matt Kaplan, Sean Wheeler, Vincent Wright, another quarterback, but we got a free safety and a corner. That's what I'm talking about. Yep, and signing those guys boosted us again. So now we have another head coach upgrade. Honestly, after signing all those dudes, I think I'm straight. I'm gonna look to build on, we're gonna keep recruiting, but I'm gonna look to build on next year. So let's get an extra 500 points for weeks 1 through 7. So next season we can get off to a strong start. We've already done a phenomenal job in recruiting. As you can see, look at the people we brought in. We already did a phenomenal job. 5-star people, 4-star, couple 3s. Y'all already know, but Dynasty is the backbone for any college football game. For me, fun gameplay and a well put together Dynasty can hold my attention for literal years. But now we all know that college football is coming back in the form of College Football 25. And just one day from the time that I'm recording this, we find out everything we need to know about the most important game mode in possibly the most important sports game of all time. A lot of people watching a video like this can probably remember the first Dynasty that they ever started. You know, that very first team that you decided to rebuild. Now, I remember mine, it was Mid-Tennessee State. Me and a few of my college teammates all picked low-tier schools, threw them in the same conference, made a best coach win. In my first Dynasty, we set up the rosters and the playbooks, and we'd manually recruit, but we'd sim all the games. It was probably like 6 or 7 of us, so we did that to get through it, but we still played like the head-to-head games. If your team made the conference championship or if your team made a bowl game, you know, stuff like that, we would always play. So in that Dynasty, right, I had a homeboy named Deuce, who in real life was a linebacker who got switched to edge. Dude was super laid back, always did his own thing. And in the Dynasty, he had chose to play with Troy. So me and him was locked in this tight recruiting battle. I spent the whole season pouring my resources into this player. Meanwhile, Deuce was just chilling, barely spent any points on him. And I don't remember the player, but he was gonna be program changing. You know that one recruit you get like early in the Dynasty, when you just lean on him and he carry you for a while, help you get your prestige up so you can recruit some more players. The one who essentially becomes the catalyst for your whole rebuild. It was that type of player, bro. Whoever got him was gonna have the edge. So the whole season, the recruit had me #1 on the list. And Deuce was right there, bro. He was like 2nd on the list. But I was #1 and I was able to bring him on a visit first. And it just so happened late in the season, I played Deuce at home. So I'm like, I bet the player we fighting over
I'm gonna bring him in when we play each other. And I have been holding my scholarship, bro, but I offered it that week. And remember, this is a head-to-head game, so we actually played this one. So we played a game, right, with the recruit in the stand in my stadium, late season conference game. It was big, and your boy came away with the dub. So at that point, I'm thinking, bro, it's signed and sealed. So after the game is over, bro, I'm feeling great. We sim the week, and I got the big smile on my face. You know how after you sim the week, like if a player signs, it'll pop up on the screen? As soon as the week finished simming, bro, it popped up, I saw his name, and my dumb ass got excited just to find out this dude chose Troy. Bro, he came to the game, watched Troy lose, and was like, you know what? I want to go over there. I couldn't believe it, bro. Before the game, I had put all the points on dude, offered him a scholarship, and won the game. And I never forget after that, man, dudes looked me in my face and said, FlemLo, sometimes players like when you don't recruit them. Bro, his logic was busted, but I couldn't argue the results. And while I tried to convince myself that the player was a loser, since he had opted to sign with the losers, deep down, I knew I was the one who held the L. Damn, I think I'm still mad about that. And look, I don't really know why I'm telling you this story, aside from the fact that was 15 years ago, and Dynasty goes so damn hard that I'm still pissed off about it till this day. All right, man, here we go. College Football 25 Dynasty Deep Dive. This is the 6-minute joint. We're going to check this out first. This should have a nice amalgamation. There's got to be a cleaner way to say that. This should summarize pretty much everything we need to know. Then we'll look for the little small details afterwards. Let's go.
Hey everyone, Kirk Herbstreit here with EA Sports College Football 25, back for another deep dive. This time we're talking about everyone's favorite mode, Dynasty.
Yes, sir.
Online Dynasty in College Football 25 can accommodate up to 32 teams, and you can play with friends for up to 30 seasons. Today we'll take a closer look at the new 12-team college football playoff, recruiting, the transfer portal, and a ton of customization options to make your program unique. College football has seen seismic change.
Okay, hold on. Hey, hold up, bro. I ain't gonna lie, bro. It feel like Kirk just came off the top rope. That first 30 seconds covered a lot. All right, bro. Let me catch my breath. I gotta wake the hell up. All right, let's go.
College football has seen seismic changes over the past few years. And in EA Sports College Football 25, you can experience this new landscape while building your program the way you want.
It looks so clean.
The 2024 season marks the debut of the new 12-team college football playoff.
Yes, sir.
You can play it first in the game months before the real thing. You can be the
that's what's up. That's what's up.
To lead your school through the new 12-team playoff and hoist the college football playoff trophy.
All right,
Recruiting is the lifeblood of college football.
Oh shit! I'm so sorry, but I have to look at this screen. You know what I mean? Okay, so options you have: you can search social media, you can DM the player, contact friends and family, send the house. You got soft sell, hard sell, schedule a visit.
Recruiting is the lifeblood of college football. And in a world of unlimited transfers, managing your dynasty roster has never been more important. Evaluate your needs and opportunities for talent upgrades at the start of each season. The best way to build a powerhouse is to recruit through the high school ranks. So let's fill up your recruiting board. Each year, over 3,500 high school recruits are generated from all over the country, with certain regions representing real-world hotspots for blue-chip talent, like South Florida and Metro Atlanta. Do research to find recruits that best fit your program and determine who you can realistically land. A recruit's interest in your school is decided by 14 different pitch grades like proximity to home, playing time, and brand exposure. So you'll need to discover how your program's pitch grades align with your recruit's desires, in addition to scouting for talent. Some players have a deal breaker requirement, and if your program cannot provide, the recruit will lock you out.
He ain't trying to hear it.
Deal breakers also drive a player's decision to enter the transfer portal. Monitor at-risk players and get one last chance to convince your favorites to stay.
That's a cool way to implement the transfer portal. I know that's not all of it, but just that little thing, like, that's cool. I like that.
Track your recruits as they narrow down their top schools. Pitch a prospect to gain more interest, and then set up school visits when the timing is right.
I like how similar it is to what we had before, but it feels like that natural upgrade. Just looking at it here, obviously I gotta play it, but just looking at this, it seems like kind of always what I wanted, which was keep what we have, bro. Just build on it, make it better, make it deeper. You don't have to come out of the blue with these all new features and try to hit me with the marketing speak to sell me the game. Just take a good foundation and build upon that more. And that's what they're doing here, bro. I like this a lot. This is hard.
It's crucial to remain in their top 10, then 8, then 5, to finally be part of their top 3. As a recruit trims down to the top 8, you can attempt to increase your appeal. If your school doesn't have exactly what the prospect is looking for, you can try to sway their opinion in your favor. Plan visits that elevate a recruit's experience, like pairing a quarterback visit with a wide receiver visit at the same time.
Nice.
It's crucial to keep an eye on the transfer portal when it opens in the offseason to round out your roster with talent you couldn't land from recruiting.
So this is the other aspect of the transfer portal. And this is exactly what I was told, that the transfer portal would work as a function of off-season recruiting, which makes total sense. And this gonna be a big opportunity for people that's trying to build up in small schools.
Keep an eye on the transfer portal when it opens in the offseason to round out your roster with talent you couldn't land from recruiting. Add portal prospects to your board just like you would with recruiting, but expect quick decisions as transfers have a shorter timeline to land a new home. Conference realignment is a hot topic in college football. And with custom conferences in EA Sports College Football 25,
this is a must.
Dynasty is yours to control. See what a 20-team super conference might look like, or revert to the traditional conference alignment. Shape the conference size and membership and set custom conference rules, set up divisions, and more. Once you've settled your conference options, it's time to select your team. Begin with a highly ranked team and dominate at the top with repeat recruiting and playoff success. Or build from the ground up with a smaller program and prove you have what it takes to go from an unknown to postseason favorite. We can't talk about your dynasty without talking about your starting job. Start as an offensive or defensive coordinator and climb the ranks to head coach, or take over a program as the head coach right away. Choose from one of the 3 base coaching types to start. Your coach type will determine what coaching skill tree you start with. From there, the abilities you acquire as you progress will determine what kind of coach you develop into.
That's the beauty of college. There's so many games within the game. There's the recruiting game. You building your coach up. You got to build your players up, but they're only going to be there for a short period of time. So you got to build your program up so that you can adequately replace those players. And if you're then doing well at the primary game, which is on the field, and you getting wins, that whole process should gradually become easier and easier over the course of the dynasty.
Unlock additional skill trees with better abilities. Or if you build up multiple skill trees, you can unlock hybrid trees that leverage a more diverse skill set.
So it looked like we got more options this time with like building up your coach, because the coach trees was cool in the last game. It really was. But this is what I'm talking about, that extra layer of depth, so that your playthrough can actually feel unique to you. And your second playthrough, also unique. Third, fourth, fifth, you know what I'm saying? Replayability.
The coaching carousel is an important part of every coach's journey. Whether you're the head man at your dream school or working your way up, the carousel is your way of fielding offers from other programs.
Coaching carousel was never my main thing, but I do like it as an alternate way to play the game.
Head coaches in Dynasty can actively manage their coordinator positions. So if one of your staff takes a job elsewhere, or you decide to cut ties for other reasons, you can use the carousel to replace them. Remember, even the greatest coaches need support, and every coach has a unique skill tree.
Beautiful.
It's important to think about how you want to build your staff, whether that's doubling down on your existing strengths to max out your benefits or seeking out balance for a well-rounded staff. Choose wisely. The decisions you make here will matter to your program's success and your coach's progression. The benefits of coach talents are stackable. So if your head coach and defensive coordinator have the same ability, the impact for that ability will be greater.
Damn. Okay, that's what's up.
For today's deep dive into Dynasty mode in EA Sports College Football 25. To make it game day every day this season, pre-order the MVP bundle.
Okay, dog. That did not disappoint. That was actually really good, and we got a lot of information in a short period of time. And with certain screens, like if you wanted to, you could go back and dig into it and start trying to figure out things right now. Me personally, I'm gonna wait because I want my experience of actually playing the game to include a lot of me discovering new things and figuring things out, which means I won't build my team the fastest, but I'm gonna have the most fun. Also, it helps the game last longer on the back end. After that initial like 1 or 2 months when everybody bored and complaining about stuff within the game, you still got a whole bunch of stuff to do. All right, man, that was fire, bro. I'm really excited for Dynasty mode now. Like, this damn game, dog. And even the little snippets of gameplay we saw, like, I could get with that. Like, that looked pretty damn good to me. All right, dog. Ooh, shit. All right, wait. It's probably a bunch of people with videos, but I know for a fact Good Game Bro said he had like a super long video. I don't know what's going on with that. Oh, there you go. Oh, this man ain't dropped it, bro. Neither one of them have dropped currently. Okay, so his is uploading over an hour long. All right, man, it looked like Drew finally got his video up. Probably took forever to process this, YouTube did, because it's an hour plus. All right, man, we got a cat who know his college football, who has played the game, talking about Dynasty mode, unfiltered is what I'm assuming. Everything is out, so he should be able to talk about everything he played. Screenshots should have some, and hopefully some new insights. And let's check this out, bro. This is hella long, so this is probably the only one I'm gonna watch.
Today we're going to be covering the College Football 25 Dynasty Deep Dive blog, as well as the video that just released. There's a lot to cover here. This was over an 80-page document with over 17,000 words. So to save your time, I have created timestamps for each category. We're going to be talking about coaches and coordinators, all their archetypes, skill trees, the coaching carousel, recruiting, which is going to be my favorite thing in this, offseason, player development and management, red shirts, dev traits, abilities, including wear and tear. I will also be covering the college football world as a whole, including the 12-team playoff, awards, stats and records, scheduling, presentation and broadcast teams, and much more. I will also be touching upon custom conferences. They mentioned Team Builder as well. We're going to be talking about online Dynasty features. If you only care about one individual thing, look at the timestamps, go there. And I do want to point out one thing quickly before we start. One thing I thought was really awesome. All the FCS schools in game seem to be inspired by YouTuber Team Builder dynasties that we've seen.
I heard about this, and that's fire, bro. That's dope.
That's inspired by the UGF Pandas, which is really cool to me. They've also got an astronaut team that looks a lot like Rocket City Moonman. There's a team that looks like Bengals Riverside Royals in there. You got the Hawaii Tech
Uncle
Sharks.
Sam
Seems to be inspired by Uncle Sam's Rejects. And there's many others out there, but I just thought that was really awesome. So you better believe FCS Southeast is on the schedule every season, just to show some respect to my past dynasties. So the people who are writing this deep dive blog is going to be Chad Walker and Ben Haumiller. Ben has been at EA for a long time. He worked on NCAA 14.
I'm a lifelong Dynasty guy myself.
So of course he loves this game series. He's been waiting for it to come back for a long time. Chad worked on college football revamps, and he's really pushed this game to a whole new level. I've spoken to them personally. Both of these guys are extremely passionate. They love college football, and they've said it here in their mission. Their mission is to satisfy the core community. Basically, the diehards is where they want this mode to be for.
So we've been hearing that kind of leading up to, and you know, you hear a lot of stuff, so I ain't really paid too much attention to it, but kind of seeing that little 6-minute video we just watched and then hearing that reiterated again, that feels pretty good. I was a little nervous they might bring these people in just to say, oh, we have them, but then don't give them any real power to really shape the mode. But it seems like that is not the case. It seems like they got to do Probably not everything they wanted to do, but a lot of the things they wanted to do, it seems like they were able to get it into the game. So that's real exciting, bro. Let's see what else he got.
Just by the depth of this deep dive blog, that their main focus for College Football 25 as a whole is Dynasty mode. The core tenets of this mode, they said they wanted it to be roster management, talent acquisition. They want you to build up your coach / your program, and they want it to be realistic to the modern college football world. They've been working on this game for about 4 years, but hard development probably like 2.5. But they've been gathering info from the community, college football coaches, forums like Reddit, wishlist videos, which they said they saw mine, which I think is cool. They also talked to some college football experts, not me, and college football analysts. Dynasty mode is all about being a coach, whether you want to be a head coach or a coordinator. So they said, we met with college football coaches and experts, started breaking down real life coaches on the whiteboard. What was their identity? What made them great? What was their journey to get to where they are today? They said what we found that both current and former coaches broadly fit into 3 main categories. Some are incredible recruiters, where others are motivators who maximize the potential of their players. And lastly, there's tacticians who out-scheme their opponents with on-the-field X's and O's.
I feel like I would fall somewhere between a recruiter and a motivator. And I know they said there were some ways you can kind of branch things off. So hopefully when I play, bro, I can find that perfect mix between motivator and recruiter. Because that's really how I play the game. On offense and defense, I honestly just kind of put the players in position to make plays. But I'm not like an overbearing type of coach, like a Kyle Shanahan who want everything run exactly my way. That's obviously a valuable strategy, but it's just not my style. So I like this, man. This is interesting.
And they said there's also a number of coaches who were more of a hybrid between 2 categories. For example, there were coaches who were great at both recruiting and X's.
There it is.
And after breaking down hundreds of coaches, 2 things were loud and clear. No coach was great at everything.
Right.
There was no single path to being a great coach. And this is like something they said touching upon specifically for NCAA 14, what everybody had a gripe with, is everybody went exclusively down the recruiting page simply because it was obviously the most valuable and there was little to no value to going down the game management path. In College Football 25, you cannot be great at everything. And the way they designed this is to where coordinators are supposed to either bolster your strengths or fill in your deficiencies. They said a rock, paper, and scissors relationship between coach types with no dominant progression path. And they said coordinators and how you build your staff matter. So the way progression works is...
It's crazy. That was the very next thing that they went into. That's exactly what I was kind of wondering about. And it's going to be interesting whether or not I decide to use my assistants to fill the void or fill the holes in my game, or if I get some cats that's just like me. It's gonna depend on who's available, me weighing all the circumstances at that moment, but that'll be an interesting decision that you have to make that hopefully will have a huge impact on how your dynasty goes.
They said a rock, paper, and scissors relationship between coach types with no dominant progression path. And they said coordinators and how you build your staff matter. So the way progression works is you're gonna start playing games. Rock, paper, and scissors relationship between coach types with no dominant progression path. And they said coordinators and how you build your staff matter. So the way progression works is you're going to start playing games, and as you play, you will complete coach goals that award XP. Once you earn enough XP, you will level up your coach to a maximum level of 50 and be awarded coach points. And coach points can be spent to upgrade your coach's abilities. Your coach can gain XP in 4 different categories, whether it be a single game, weekly, season, or career goals. Some of these include your players getting drafted. You can get it from individual games, like a single play, like getting an interception, just getting a rushing touchdown. But you can also get it for beating your rival, beating a top 25 team, or winning the national championship. You can also get XP in recruiting. So recruiting goals can be specific to a single prospect. For example, sign a 5-star prospect, or a full season, like sign the best recruiting class in the country. You can also get it from statistics like weekly goals, like being ranked in the top 10, or season stat goals, for example, like 4,000 team passing yards, ranked top 5 in offensive yards, and career goals like win 5 national championships. So we know how you gain XP now, but what are the coach archetypes we got here? They said you can think of this similar to traditional RPG classes where all of your party members have a specific class, archetype, and role. Ultimately, in order for your team to be successful, all of the players in your party must do their job and work together. All coaches will start with a base class or a coach archetype, which can be thought of as your special ability, so to speak, in a traditional RPG. The base archetypes fall into 3 categories: recruiting, motivation, and scheme. For your base archetype, you can progress in multiple ways. You can become an expert in a single category like recruiting when you become an elite recruiter, and you can excel on the recruiting trail. Alternatively, you can become a hybrid coach who is strong in multiple areas. For example, a talent developer is great both at talent acquisition and player development.
So my early thoughts is I'm definitely going hybrid, although that feels like a longer, more difficult road. Usually if you stack one thing early in the beginning, that usually leads to you getting off to a faster start. But I'll probably go the long road, take the longer path.
The ultimate goal is to become a program builder or CEO atop the world of college football. Achieving an elite archetype like program builder or CEO is a combination of on-field success and ability progression. He stresses here there is no single formula to reach these statuses, which I think is nice. You will be able to mix and match different ability combinations and progression paths, leading to strong customization. In total, there are 11 different archetypes, each with their own focuses and perks. Together, they form what they said is a rock, paper, and scissors relationship where there is no dominant archetype. I mean, they're not denying recruiting is obviously the most important thing in college football, but focusing solely on recruiting here could leave you vulnerable in other areas. And like they said, no coach is good at everything. You have limited points. You're not going to be able to max out everything, which is why these coordinators matter a lot. They also said that there's 5 different XP speed settings for coaches. So I guess you can adjust it to whatever experience you want. If you want a very, very long grind, you could probably put it at very slow. And if you're more casual and you just want to play a couple of seasons or something, I guess you can put it at extremely fast.
We'll leave it at
normal. How do you upgrade your archetype and what does it do? Each archetype has a set of prerequisites and objectives that must be completed in order to purchase them. For example, in order to become an elite recruiter, you must spend 50 coach points in the recruiter archetype and sign 2 top 5 recruiting classes. Once these goals are complete, the archetype becomes available for purchase with coach points. When creating your coach, you will select which base archetype you want to start with. The other 2 base archetypes will then be available for purchase without the need of any additional requirements. Purchasing an archetype unlocks new sets of abilities as well as new opportunities in the coaching carousel, which we'll talk about more later. Additionally, each archetype has a perk when it is active. For example, Tactician has the Winner perk, which awards additional XP every time you win a game, which I love that. Your active archetype is automatically determined. If you own Program Builder or CEO archetypes, they will always be active, regardless of how much you spend in other archetypes. If you do not own CEO or Program Builder, your active archetype is the one that you spent the most coach points in. All owned coach abilities are always on, regardless of which archetype is currently active. So how do these abilities work? Once you own an archetype, you can purchase the abilities within it. More than 50 coach abilities. Each ability can have up to 4 tiers, and every tier has a purchase cost associated with it. Every archetype, with the exception of Scheme Guru, Program Builder, and CEO, has their abilities broken down by position group. This increases the level of depth and specialization each coach has. No longer is a coach great at recruiting across the board. Now coaches will specialize in specific position groups, making your staff composition that much more important.
Right.
In addition to position-based boosts, there are also coach abilities with core gameplay effects.
I like that, you know what I mean? It feels so realistic because you have, think about how many wide receiver U and DBU type schools exist, schools that really just excel at recruiting certain positions, or like Iowa with tight ends, or even looking at it the other way, like certain powerhouse teams in real life who just flat out suck at recruiting quarterbacks. So I really like that, bro. That's gonna add a lot of depth.
For example, the Scheme Guru archetype focuses on your gameplay style. If you're a coach who likes to play fast, you can upgrade fast tempo offense, providing you with the following boosts. Like I said, these are in 4 different tiers. So at the lowest tier, we got something called Battery Pack. Offensive players fatigue slower and hurry up. In the next tier, you get caught napping, increase the delay to defenders looking to the sideline at snap. At the 3rd tier, On Their Heels, you're going to get Team Composure boosts for first downs gained while running the hurry up. And at the top level, it's called Tip Your Hand, which gives you a chance to see the defense's coverage shell and hurry up. I do kind of like that these kind of things are urging you to play in a specific kind of play style. You got to form an identity around the way you build your coach, and you're incentivized to play within that role. Otherwise, you're kind of just wasting those abilities. You can also focus on upgrading the discipline/communication ability. At the lowest level, it's called Hater Blockers, which is a slight reduction in crowd noise. Second one, Teflon, is significant reduction of crowd noise impact on the road. Tier 3 is called polished. Offensive players will commit slightly fewer penalties. At the top tier, clean sheet offense, offensive players will commit significantly fewer penalties. Now, I honestly don't know how often penalties are going to happen, but I imagine like on the road, they're going to be more common because we know they have those home field advantage effects set to the maximum. And they said, of course, balance is critically important here, so there are different defensive counters to all of the offensive play style abilities. They have an example here where you can upgrade your ground and pound defense to become a stout run defense and reduce the effects of physical offense continuously running the football. I mean, we could be here all day talking about abilities, but they're only going to mention a few here. Now, I keep talking about this program and CEO archetypes, but they said these are only available for the head coaches because they want them to feel different from the coordinators. And they said the abilities within them. Now, I keep talking about this program and CEO archetypes, but they said these are only available for the head coaches because they want them to feel different from the coordinators. And they said the abilities within them are diverse and range from roster management and program culture to home field advantage and recruiting pipeline boosts. Speaking of coordinators, let's go more in depth on them here. Both coordinators and head coaches have the same set of abilities and archetypes available to them, so that way can lead to a natural progression from being a coordinator to a head coach. Staff management is incredibly important because your coordinators can either complement your strengths or shore up your deficiencies. All the abilities your coaching staff own can stack, increasing the effect of an ability. The abilities owned
We
by
heard
the head
about
coach
that
have the greatest impact, though.
so just the coaching coordinator skill tree situation, that whole thing seems really dope. And I talked about before how important it is to have those games within the larger game and allow each of those games to be as deep as possible. But not in a way where it's like, you know, where an open world game has a massive world, but it ain't nothing in it. Not like fluff, but things that make sense within the context of a college football program and offer a reward that is worthwhile in game. All right, man, let's jump to recruiting. This is the longest section, as it should be. This is how you show the proper respect to recruit. You feel me? Let's go.
Forward to recruiting.
Yes,
They
sir.
wanted to modernize recruiting, obviously, to the modern game. So that includes the transfer portal, new red shirts, but they also have some things that I did not expect them to add that are super cool. The biggest change that you'll notice is with the geographic regions. I'll talk about that more in a second. A lot of us mentioned that we liked recruiting in games pre-NCAA 14 because they had more depth, but it was also tedious.
Yeah.
Some people liked NCAA 14. They liked how it was fast, but they did not like how it was shallow and kind of boring.
That's facts, bro. So to me, NCAA 14 is the best NCAA game, hopefully before this one. But the recruiting in NCAA 13 was 100% better. Most semi-hardcore Dynasty players have been saying that since way back in the day. I strongly prefer 14's gameplay, but one major thing that I always felt like they missed on was that they downgraded the recruiting in the sense that they made it a lot easier and faster than 13. And I felt like that was cool, but they should have had an individual recruiting difficulty setting where, let's say, the Heisman setting would give you recruiting more like NCAA 13's recruiting, and then like varsity or All-American would give you more like the recruiting that we got in NCAA 14. I'm the type that's always going to do the harder recruiting. I just find it to be way more fun. But I do think the option of having that flexibility there will allow each player to customize their dynasty to their liking.
NCAA 14 because they had more depth, but it was also tedious. Some people liked NCAA 14. They liked how it was fast, but they did not like how it was shallow and kind of boring. This new system, they wanted you to feel like you were establishing a relationship with the prospect. So they really wanted to blend the two kind of systems. They wanted recruiting to feel meaningful and allowed you to build a connection with recruits through discovery while also being conscious of your time each week, which I think is glad that they paid attention to that because that's what pretty much everybody I know was saying. But they said ultimately we landed on 4 core goals when building your program. Number 1, they wanted to humanize recruits by giving them unique needs and motivations that the player has to discover by interacting with the recruit.
That's
they wanted
great.
to differentiate regions of the country by player caliber, quality, and type to authentically capture high school talent based on historical real-world data.
Oh, that's
I will go more in
fire.
depth later. This is something that I think is really cool.
Yeah.
I wanted to represent the different resources available to schools, ensuring the top schools can blanket the country while smaller schools will need to be more targeted with their approach. And lastly, they want to make the transfer portal feel authentically unpredictable. They're saying a lot of things I'm liking here.
Right.
Like, I think one of the weirdest things in NCAA 14 is you would see smaller schools kind of just rise up out of nowhere. Like, Army seemed to be a perennial top 5 team for some reason, while Alabama seemed to fall off all the time, which was kind of a head scratcher. You think you're at the top of the mountain, you'd be able to stay up there.
Bruh.
The second weird thing that always happens in Dynasty, Alabama always declines, bro. It seems that in nearly every Dynasty I do, if you get about 5-6 years in, all you're gonna see, sometimes sooner than that, you're gonna see Bama just declining. But I mean, they're in a great pipeline place to get recruits. Like, I really don't know why this happens. I just know that it happens.
Go more in depth on the recruiting process, though. There's 3 distinct phases here: discovery, pitch, and the close. In the discovery phase, you are finding which prospects to target, what their skills are, and what they care about most. This stage is all about uncovering information about the recruit as quickly as possible. The sooner you can discover how well they align with your program, the better. Once a recruit announces their top 5 schools, it's time to pitch. You are selling the recruit on your program and what you have to offer. How well your school aligns with their motivations will determine how successful you are. And finally, you come to the closing stage. This is when you bring the recruit in for an official visit. If the visit goes well, you'll make huge gains with the recruit and possibly secure a verbal commitment following the visit. Ultimately, the recruit will make their final decision on National Signing Day. In this game, they can actually decommit too from their verbal commitment if you break their deal breakers, but I'll go more in depth on that later. But before we dive deeper into each of these, let's start by discussing how every program and recruit is unique. A lot of these will look familiar to you if you've played any college football game in the past. Grading scaled from D- all the way to A+. We got 14 different categories, and like I said, these will look very familiar to you if you played NCAA 14 or other NCAA football games. Talking things like playing time, play style, championship contender, program tradition, campus life, stadium atmosphere, pro potential, brand exposure, which is brand new. It's basically NIL and primetime games, academic prestige, conference prestige, coach stability, athletic facilities, proximity to home. Some things are pretty self-explanatory, like playing time. This represents how long it will take for a player to become a starter at their position. Playing time is individualized to each recruit and based on their position group and overall. So if you're recruiting a 65 overall quarterback and you've got a 92 overall sophomore, he's not going to like his chances to be starting anytime soon. I'll talk about the more unique ones and some that are new. Campus lifestyle is a representation of the city and area surrounding the campus, as well as the campus itself. This is one of those grades that cannot be changed or impacted though. But brand exposure is the one that's brand new to this game. This grades a team's overall brand recognition, the potential NIL opportunities a player could get at the school, and how often the school plays in primetime games. Now, you cannot offer anyone NIL specific deals. You will not see your players getting any sponsorships necessarily. It just kind of represents the idea of it in this game. I'm not sure if they have any plans to add any specific things in the future, but this is what we got for this game.
Oddly, I had kind of forgot about that. Like, I forgot about the NIL aspect of it. But yeah, earlier on, I was wondering how they were going to implement that. And it doesn't seem like... You know what? Before I said, let me listen to that one more time.
This is one of those grades that cannot be changed or impacted though. But brand exposure is the one that's brand new to this game. This grades a team's overall brand recognition, the potential NIL opportunities a player could get at the school, and how often the school plays in primetime games. Now, you cannot offer anyone NIL specific deals. You will not see your players getting any sponsorships necessarily. It just kind of represents the idea of it in this game. I'm not sure if they have any plans to add any specific things in the future, but this is what we got for this game.
That's one of those things that from a marketing standpoint, from like a pre-game excitement standpoint, that kind of comes across as a downer. But I gotta say, when I think about the playability of a dynasty mode, so not just the game, but of dynasty in general, that is probably the best way to do it, since it ultimately just has to do with brand recognition. At least the way that it's programmed into the game, it gives you a direct way to build that up without too much goofiness going on, you know. Like basically just be a high profile team and you'll have an opportunity to get players who would get NIL. But ultimately, as I think about it, they gotta find ways to add in specific NIL deals. And not every NIL deal works like this in real life, but one thing they could do was allow you as a school, as you build your program, to get access to more and bigger deals that you can then basically assign to a certain number of players. Like a small school might have access to one used car dealership NIL deals. You can get that to your quote-unquote star, 3-star quarterback, where a 5-star school might have up to like 50. And that would range from bigger deals from bigger brands down to the local deals as well. Like I said, in real life, I know the schools are not directly involved in every NIL deal. I think you're a fool if you say none. But in Dynasty mode, because I'm running the program, I think that'll be a good way to implement individual deals. And the beauty of it is it ties directly into this system that they already have in the game. You can base it on the same thing as far as team exposure, but just add that extra level of depth into the system you already got.
Any sponsorships necessarily. It just kind of represents the idea of it in this game. I'm not sure if they have any plans to add any specific things in the future, but this is what we got for this game. Same thing with campus lifestyle. Academic prestige cannot change. They said this ranks all universities based on real-world academic rankings.
So how does that work with Team Builder?
Decisions you make on the recruiting trail can impact the playing time grade. Even if a player is a starter today, signing new players in recruiting may negatively impact their playing time grade and cause them to enter the transfer portal. See, this is a new dynamic we've never had before. Like an NCAA 14, once they're on your roster, most people stay there. So you got to be careful with your recruiting decisions or suffer the consequences.
That's interesting. One, I wonder how much that's actually going to weigh in, or do you end up with like one of those Ohio State problems where you signing a top 5 quarterback every single year and ultimately 2 or 3 of them end up transferring? That's going to be a fun little problem to try to wrestle with.
We should note here that Championship Contender uses a combination of your top 25 poll ranking, team prestige, and an assessment of your current roster quality with blue chip ratio, which looks at the percentage of your roster that is made up of 4 and 5-star players. Most grades update dynamically throughout the season, while some only update at the end of every season. It's important to keep tabs on your grades throughout the season, and if you're trending in the wrong direction, it could trigger decommitments from verbally committed recruits.
Man.
Which I think is cool. I've never really had players decommit before in games that I can remember. At least in like NCAA 14, it definitely wasn't a thing. You don't have to check in depth each week at this thing because it says it's going to quickly give you a weekly summary of things that have made any changes in these areas.
Bro, thank you. Quality of life stuff just in the first iteration. You know what I'm saying? We got to give a round of applause for that. That's nice.
Anything that was positively or negatively impacted. And it even shows you which players are at risk from transferring if it gets too low. These are things I hope give you like the quality of life thing, so I'm not having to go deep into some menus to look for this stuff.
Exactly.
Prestige grades range from 0 to 5 stars in half-star increments based on their current My School grades. They said very few programs will achieve elite 5-star status.
We'll see.
And even fewer will be able to maintain it for a prolonged period of time. Ultimately, Team Prestige plays a pivotal role in recruiting and the caliber of players who want to play for your program. Now, stick with me. There's still a lot of good stuff here. So each season, there's more than 3,500 recruits that are generated from across the country, just like the real world. Every class is different. Some years, there's a plethora of great quarterback talent, while others have very few great prospects all around. I mean, just think about all the NFL classes and stuff we see. Certain regions will be more consistent in the caliber, quality, and type of recruits they produce than others. But this goes deeper than just like California has good quarterbacks. I'm talking very specifically, Southern California is known for producing great quarterback talent, while East Texas consistently produces some of the best wide receivers in the country. But it goes even deeper than this. East Texas is known for producing great receivers historically, but more specifically, they're known for big and physical receivers. Whereas if you look at South Florida, you're going to see fast, deep threat receivers who have a smaller size. And they said, talking about pipelines, they said it was clear that even in today's day and age, recruiting is still highly regionalized. They talked about strategies and tactics with current and former coaches. And like I kept saying, they're rethinking the way this pipeline system works. So like you'll see it right away, it's clear that not every state is created equal when it comes to recruiting talent and pipelines. Having a pipeline in Florida is much more valuable than in New York. There's also different regions of Florida specifically. So the way it works in College Football 25 is Florida is not one whole mass of a recruiting pipeline. I'm talking specifically There's 3 different pipelines in Florida: North Florida, Central Florida, and South Florida. Similarly, you got like Metro Atlanta has its own pipeline, but they're combining some other areas like New York and New Jersey are now one combined pipeline, which I think is neat. But overall, there's still 50 total pipelines. Each pipeline has 5 levels, and every school was given a pipeline level based on historical data. The higher your pipeline level, the stronger your influence in this region. This will boost a recruit's initial interest in your school and improve the impact of your pitches. And a thing to note here, a school's pipeline level will never change, which ensures that schools who are historically strong recruiters in a given region will always have an advantage. For example, a school's pipeline level will never change, which ensures that schools who are historically strong recruiters in a given region will always have an advantage. For example, Florida has historically dominated recruiting in Central Florida. LSU regularly reaches into East Texas and all along the Gulf Coast. So this accurately reflects the challenges of recruiting to a small school that is not located in or adjacent to a strong pipeline.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, your school's pipeline will heavily influence the types of players you will be able to get and where they are from. The bonuses for being the highest tier in a pipeline are extremely strong, and schools are incentivized to recruit their pipelines. Together, pipelines and deal breakers create a much more realistic and less exploitable recruiting experience, but you can still land 4-star recruits at small schools. It's just going to take a very lucky fit, really, and a heavy investment of resources and time.
I really love the idea of that, man. Obviously, I gotta get my hands on it, but just difficulty in general when you're playing a game against primarily the computer. And I'm sure I'll get into some online Dynasty, but the thing that I'm most excited about is my solo dolo offline Dynasty that I can recruit as slow as I want, take as much time as I need, or move as fast as I want. I could play 7 games in one day or pause the game at halftime and go to the gym and come back and finish the rest later. But man, oh man, this is fire. This is, bro, this feel like everything that I really could have wanted. Like more really. Like I couldn't even ask for this much and expected to get it. You know what I'm saying? Like I could ask, but like really believe it was coming. Like this right here.
They said their hope here is that you'll no longer have to create custom house rules in your online Dynasty to prevent your friend from cheesing the system, so to speak. But let's talk about what recruits care about.
Oh, wait, what?
But they said their hope here is that you'll no longer have to create land 4-star recruits at small schools. It's just going to take a very lucky fit, really, and a heavy investment of resources and time. But they said their hope here is that you'll no longer have to create custom house rules in your online Dynasty to prevent your friend from cheesing the system, so to speak. But let's talk about where
they still better have custom house rules. Hopefully we don't need them, but you know, they should be there.
But let's talk about what recruits care about here. So like we already established, there's the 14 different motivations a recruit can care about. What motivations they care about is influenced by their star rating. So for example, a 5-star prospect is going to care more about getting to the next level, winning championships, and growing their brand with NIL opportunities than a 2-star will.
Right.
He's probably going to care more about academics, coach stability, and playing close to home, because this dude's not likely to go to the NFL.
Yeah.
Every recruit will have 3 motivations, and we're going to call these 3 motivations is what their ideal pitch is. During the discovery stage, your job as a recruiter is to find out what their ideal pitch is. So you want to see what their 3 main motivations are.
Right.
And you want to do it as fast as possible to determine if they align with your program or not. And you also want to see if your recruit does not align with your program. It's going to be an uphill battle to sign those guys. Now you can sway them into a more ideal pitch, but I'll talk more about that later. There is a chance that one of the 3 ideal pitch motivations is a deal breaker. And deal breakers represent a motivation that a recruit is extremely passionate about and will not budge on. So that's one that you cannot sway them whatsoever. If you do not satisfy their deal breaker, they will not talk with you. Additionally, a deal breaker stays with a player forever. So once they are on your roster, they will still have the same deal breaker they had when you recruited them to your school. You can think of this as like a promise to them. If you fail to uphold your side of the deal, there is a chance they will decide to enter the transfer portal at the end of the season. Every recruit will start with a list of schools they are interested in. When a recruit generates their initial top list, they evaluate every school's My School grades, which we talked about earlier, in relation to their ideal pitch and motivations.
Right.
They also take into account their home pipeline and proximity to home. This means that recruits from Atlanta are more likely to have schools in the Southeast in their initial top schools. However, some prospects will look to leave home and play for a school further away if the schools outside the region better fit their needs, or if they don't consider any schools in the area good enough for them. That's good to know. So but I do like that majority of players are going to stay within their region. They're probably going to stick within their region maybe when they're freshmen and sophomores, but maybe they'll transfer out later and really broaden their horizons then when their motivations change, which we will talk about more later. Similarly, most of the top schools for a prospect who values academics are going to be very similar to one another. So for example, if you're playing as Vanderbilt, you're going to be seeing a lot of the times Rice, Northwestern, Stanford are all going to be on there because all those schools have high academic prestige. And depending on the motivations and location of a recruit, it is possible for them to be open to hearing from any school, or if they've already narrowed it down to a top 8 or even a top 5. But once recruiting starts, recruits will narrow down their top schools over time to going from open to top 8 to top 5 to top 3, and ultimately to a commitment. If this happens in season, though, it's only a verbal commitment. Your job is to stay above the cut line each week. Great recruiters will quickly recognize losing battles and pivot their resources to a different prospect with more promise of commitment. After advancing the week, you'll be shown a recruiting summary of any changes in recruiting statuses so you can quickly identify where you need to spend your time that week. Like we said, if you're worried about anything being too tedious, there are things that they built into this game to kind of speed up the process. Let's go more in depth on each stage so you can get an idea of what it's going to actually look like.
Okay.
So let's start with stage 1 in discovery and prospect identification. So of course you can just go through the main prospect list and find guys that way. There's a recommended filter, which uses the same logic as the AI to fill that board. Takes into account your team position needs, what pipeline a recruit is from, a recruit interest in your school, and their star rating. But you can also quickly filter the prospect list where you can go by top prospects, star rating, and state. You can have even more control by searching individually in an advanced search where you can search by position, player type, state, minimum star rating, height, weight, handness, which is specific to quarterbacks, so right-handed, left-handed, and you can also search if they're interested in your school. And I think what I like about the top 8, top 5, top 3 system is it's a lot different than the percent recruited thing from NCAA 14. It's more clear in what stage they're in. That also gives you an indication of how locked in you have to be if you want to recruit these guys. Just like past games, you can only have 35 prospects on your recruiting board at a given time. But on this page, you can see if they're in a certain pipeline you have, see what stage they're in, what interest number you are for them. Have you offered them a scholarship? What star rating they are? And there's a big red banner on it saying if it's a team need or not. So, of course, team needs are always going to be a big thing here, but where is it? And as you continue to target and sign players, your team needs will update accordingly. So instead of point system in recruiting, you're going to have recruiting hours. These are your core currency to spend here on recruiting actions and scouting each week. The amount of recruiting hours you have depends on your team prestige and what part of the season you're in. This is really cool to me. So teams with a higher team prestige will have more recruiting hours each week. This is meant to model the recruiting resources a program has. The higher tier programs will have significantly more resources available to them. So for example, in the preseason, a 5-star program is going to have 1,000 recruiting hours compared to only 350 hours for a 1-star program.
That is a massive difference.
You can see the massive difference in there right away. And the time of year also impacts your recruiting hours. Preseason, off-season, you're not preparing for games each Saturday. So as a result, you have significantly more time to spend on recruiting than you do in the heart of the regular season. So recruiting actions stay week to week until you are either locked out, a player commits, or if you change them yourself. So that basically gives you the feeling of set it and forget it that they kind of mentioned to me in the past. During the preseason, you're only able to scout and offer scholarships. Prior to scouting a player, you will only be able to see their star rating, height, weight, hometown, position, and archetype. You will see question marks on their attributes, abilities, and development trait. The attributes represent the top 10 ratings for their archetype. You start from unscouted. This is represented by the question marks we already said, and the default state of players. Then you got partially scouted. You'll see a horizontal bar. The left side of the bar is 0, and the right side of the bar is 99. Within the bar is a gold zone that covers 25% of the bar's space. The player's true rating for that attribute is somewhere in that range. And once you have a player mostly scouted, it's still that same horizontal bar, but the gold zone only covers 10% of the bar now, so it's a much clearer picture. But when you fully scout a player, you know exactly how good the player is. You see the exact attribute rating. Each time you scout a prospect, you will reveal a limited amount of information about them. So the default maximum is 50 hours, but this can be increased to a maximum of 70 hours. And like we said, this is based on the stacking of the coaching abilities. So like if all three coaches have always be recruiting, it can go up to the maximum of 70. But if only your head coach has it, it's 60. Offensive coordinator and head coach have it, it's 65. But if you have that defensive coordinator in there with all the other two, it's up to 70.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So if this is what you really care about, finding coordinators who fit that, it's going to really give you an edge. Sometimes scouting a player will fully scout an attribute, while other attributes may only be partially scouted.
So a lot of this is the exact same way that the old game, like they took certain things that were kind of gamified and made them a little more specific to the context, and it seems like they dialed it in more, but it's very similar to what we had before, which is perfect. It's perfect. That's exactly what they should do.
Additionally, each scouting action will also reveal physical and mental abilities. While attributes and abilities are able to be scouted, a player's development trait is not. And they said when they talked with coaches about identifying a player's development trait, they overwhelmingly said it was an intangible factor that is difficult to identify without a distinct intuition and direct in-person contact with a recruit. As a result, they said their discussions, the primary time you will unlock a prospect's development trait is on National Signing Day, basically when you've officially got this player on your team. However, trait mental an edge. Sometimes scouting a player will fully scout an attribute, while other attributes may only be partially scouted. Additionally, each scouting action will also reveal physical and mental abilities. While attributes and abilities are able to be scouted, a player's development trait is not. And they said when they talked with coaches about identifying a player's development trait, they overwhelmingly said it was an intangible factor that is difficult to identify without a distinct intuition and direct in-person contact with a recruit. As a result, they said their discussions, the primary time you will unlock a prospect's development trait is on National Signing Day, basically when you've officially got this player on your team. However, they said there is an ability called the Mind Reader ability. This is, there is a chance you will learn their development trait when you spend time with them during their official visit, which is cool. I feel like by the time you've already had them visit, though, you're pretty far down the path of looking for this player. It would kind of just be the icing on the cake more than anything.
Yeah, for sure.
They said the coaches they talked to described the level of ambiguity and uncertainty around a player's skill. It is set higher for lower star-rated players. They said this because like top prospects get all the attention from social media, scouts, high-profile camps, so it's way easier to know more about these kind of players. Conversely, lower star-rated recruits generally have less visibility, which leads to a greater level of uncertainty and unknown what their true skill is.
Yeah.
This creates an opportunity to find a diamond in the rough.
Yes,
so
sir.
yes, a gym and bust system is returning to this game. So there's a chance you identify what a true skill is for a player, and it could be worse than their star rating indicates. So for example, a 4-star bust is really a 3-star quality talent. And a 4-star gym has a skill level of a 5-star. But a bust does not mean a player is bad. Like a 5-star bust is still like a 4-star quality player. That's still very good. They said in their system, there's a lot of variance in lower star rated prospects, which provides you with the opportunity to build your program with high quality players who slip through the cracks.
The issue is like so if you're a 4-star bust, so technically you're a high quality 3-star, okay? But you're probably as difficult to recruit as a typical 4-star, as opposed to being easier to recruit like the 3-star guy, you know what I mean? So like you expecting a certain treatment, but you're really not that level of player. Or maybe once that player is a bust, other schools realize it and they're not getting recruited as hard and they're easy to get, we'll see. Hopefully there's a mix there in this situation to situation.
Landing top blue chip prospects is incredibly difficult So this can be highly effective recruiting strategy to build your program. So the way I'm kind of looking at this is like, if you put in the hours and you're a very sharp recruiter, your skill as the player, not necessarily your head coach, if you're able to find these diamonds in the rough, you can definitely build a good program off of that. But it's just going to be way more inconsistent and more difficult than if you had the resources of a top school to be able to land those blue chip prospects, because obviously they have a higher hit rate, which I think is...
I think ideally you have to kind of balance it out, right? You know, what I'll probably do, I'll take like a couple of, like early on when I'm not a big program, I'll take a couple big swings at some high tier cats. I'll probably build the bulk of my board with mid tier players. And then probably a little bit later in the process, I look to find a few diamonds in the rough who are being under recruited, who I can slide in and snatch up.
Fun. It's adding a little bit of immersion the more and more I go deep into this. Finding the ideal pitch. Once you determine a prospect meets your initial criteria, it is time to begin uncovering intel about their motivations and what they care about. So there are 5 recruiting actions you can use to uncover information about the prospect. In addition to uncovering information, you also gain some influence with the prospect. Each action has a recruiting hour cost and corresponding benefit. The more hours you spend on a recruit, the faster you will uncover information and the more influence you will gain. You can increase how fast you uncover information and the amount of influence you earn with the most influential ability, which gives you a bonus to recruiting actions. So the 5 recruiting actions you can do are these. You obviously can offer a scholarship. Scholarships show the prospect you are very interested in them, and as a result, you will gain a small weekly influence bonus. You will not be able to bring a recruit to campus for an official visit or receive a commitment from them until a prospect has received a scholarship offer. So you probably want to do that earlier than later. You can search their social media. This will also give you a very small amount of influence when they see you like their story. You can also DM the player. DMs will give you a small amount of influence as you start to build up that relationship. You can also contact friends and family. You're going to learn a lot more about what players' values are by doing this. A significant amount of influence with the prospect. You can also send the house, which is basically sending every available resource you have after a prospect to gain as much influence with them as possible. But now moving on to stage 2, where you're actually pitching to these guys. Now that you've learned what their ideal pitch is, their motivations, what they care about, the more information you have built up, you're going to be able to understand more specifically what you should be targeting. But if you don't have that much information, you're going to be kind of flying in the dark. You'll effectively be flying blind, and you're going to risk pitching them on something they do not care about. If your pitch does not align with their motivations, it can actually have an adverse effect on their perception of you and your program. When pitching a prospect on something they do not care about. So like, you probably be careful if you them. But they said you can also do this, like, to hard sell the recruit is when you really know what they want, you can hard sell them. Penalty is they do not care in a hard sell. Soft selling awards a moderate amount of influence when choosing the correct effect on the perception of you and effectively be flying blind, and you're going to risk pitching them on something they do not care about. If your pitch does not align with their motivations, it can actually have an adverse effect on their perception of you and your program. When pitching a prospect, there are 2 different types you can use: a soft sell and a hard sell. Soft selling awards a moderate amount of influence when choosing the correct pitch. It also limits the downside and the risk penalty when pitching a prospect on something they do not care about. So like, you probably want to do this when you have some idea of what the prospect recruit is motivated by, but if you really know what they want, you can hard sell them. Penalty is much larger here if you don't, so I'd be careful if you don't know what they want. You have the higher range of outcomes.
It's been so long, but I'm pretty sure in 13 that was a similar system to this.
Like, you have more influence when you use the hard sell, but it's also coming at a greater risk of completely annoying them. But they said you can also do this, like, to hard sell the recruit is when you know their ideal pitch, or if you're extremely desperate, you're just hoping for the best. After selecting a pitch type, you will then select your pitch. So each of these pitches is actually a collection of 3 motivations in one, and there is a total of 20 pitches you can choose from. So one example of this is called Sunday Bound, which is a pitch that sells a recruit on your school being a championship contender, having high conference prestige, and your pro potential, kind of all lumped into one. And how well the pitch aligns with the prospect's motivations, as well as your associated My School grades, will ultimately determine how well your pitch lands. And it says you can increase the impact of your My School grades with the upsell ability, which sounds like that's in like the recruiter tree if I had to guess. If your school does not perfectly align with their ideal pitch, or if you're looking for a way to get a competitive advantage, but like I mentioned way earlier, you can sway a prospect into an ideal pitch you want to sell. This can give you a competitive advantage. So successfully swaying a prospect will give them a second ideal pitch that is available to you. It is possible that a second ideal pitch creates a third ideal pitch combination as a result. Your chances of successfully swaying a prospect increases the more overlap there is between the ideal pitch motivations and the pitch you're trying to sway them on. It is possible to sway them on a pitch with zero motivation overlap, but that has a very low probability of success. For example, let's say the prospect's current ideal pitch is hometown hero, which includes campus lifestyle, proximity to home, and program tradition. To increase your probability of success, you want to sway them on a pitch that also has one or two of the hometown hero motivations. An example, let's say you sway the prospect on the college experience pitch, which includes academic prestige, campus lifestyle, and stadium atmosphere. If the sway was successful, the prospect will now care about academic prestige.
Okay. Yeah, okay, we kind of got that.
You can allocate to a recruit in a week. This allows you to continue to do your normal recruiting on the prospect in the same week you schedule a visit. A visit is broken down into two main parts. You got scheduling and activity. Timing is everything when it comes to scheduling a visit. Waiting to bring the recruit in for a big-time rivalry game late in the season could have a lot of upside, but it also carries the risk, since there is a chance the prospect will commit somewhere else prior to your visit date.
Yeah.
To simplify it,
Or the same thing can happen to you that happened to me. You can bring him in on that visit, smack your rival school, and he still goes there any goddamn way.
big games really matter, but so does speed here. You want to be careful with your visits. Like if you're scheduling against FCS schools, most prospects will not care. There's less to gain there. And honestly, more to lose, because if you lose to that FCS school, that's going to be wildly embarrassing. So like the risk versus reward is just not worth it against an FCS school. You want to prioritize probably those big games. So there's pros and cons to each option, and I revisit. So like a quarterback and a wide receiver together are going to for each week. Makes it so you have to space it around and make more.
All right, I think we got most of that, man. Let's jump to... I feel like Kirk probably covered everything we need to know about the transfer portal. Let's listen to some of it.
Not be complete without the addition of the transfer portal. You can use the transfer portal to quickly upgrade your roster, but it can also gut your program if a mass of players head to the exits. Just like recruits, players on your roster also have a deal breaker. Deal breakers can be thought of as a promise between you and the player. Forward to player development and management. And we're going to start off with the position changes. Just like you could in the old games, you can switch any position to any other position you want. So if you really want your quarterback to be a wide receiver next season because he's a crazy athlete but has a noodle arm, you can do that, of course. Just like last time, it's going to show you the projected overall of what they will be when you switch it over. But what's nice is there's a quality of life thing here. It's going to show you where they rank on the depth chart, number of players you already have at that position. But something to note here, when you're switching players to new positions, they're going to get a new set of physical abilities because different positions have different ones. The physical abilities and tiers they receive are determined by their new attributes. Mental abilities will not change unless the mental ability does not apply to their new position. But now let's talk about player progression. There's a lot of really good stuff here, so pay attention.
Here we go.
So players can improve throughout the season, but the bulk of their progression and development happens in the spring and the summer, so the off season. One thing to note here, mental abilities cannot be upgraded. They said they wanted to do this to allow for greater differentiation between players. So what you see when they're freshmen will be the same when they're seniors. Players will automatically progress their attributes and physical abilities. Players will progress during the season based on their on-field performance, but the bulk of the progression will happen in the offseason. And there's a couple of things that affect progression. You have what year in school you are, so freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You have coach abilities that can improve this, and you have dev traits. Younger players, like rising sophomores, will take larger leaps during the offseason than a rising senior. A player's coaching staff will have a significant impact on their development. For example, motivators can have the pay it forward ability, which awards bonus XP to a position group every time that position is drafted in the first 3 rounds, which I think is kind of cool. You can kind of establish yourself as, like, let's say, wide receiver university, kind of like how Ohio State and Alabama have done. Motivators can also have the put in work ability, which increases off-season development for players in a particular position group. Progression will then be further modified by the player's development trait. So yes, there are dev traits, but there's 4 of them here. The most common is called normal. These players progress at a standard rate, but you can still expect them to grow steadily over their career. The next level is called impact. They said this type of player can really change a team. They'll progress faster than normal with a higher upside. The third level is Star, a potential Sunday player. There are very few of these to go around, and they'll establish themselves early as fast learners. And finally, the Elite dev trait. The best of the best. These players will make a statement the moment they get on campus and have the potential to be an all-time great.
Okay, just looking at that, impact feels like elite for like a bad player. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's how it's gonna work. But like if I get a player who's a 60 overall, he's never gonna be a superstar. He's never gonna be elite, but he builds up the bottom of your roster. You know what I'm saying? That's what that feels like. Everything else is self-explanatory.
I like how they'll explain those. I'm really curious. I want to see how these look in action, though. So we already talked about earlier, the dev trait is mostly hidden in the scouting process, unless you have a specific ability that reveals it when they come to visit. However, once they step foot on campus, you're going to know their dev trait. And this thing was one of my favorite things I've seen in the entire deep dive. It's called skill groups. As opposed to progressing each attribute individually, players will instead progress an entire skill group. And what a skill group is a collection of related attributes. For example, a running back power skill group includes the obvious ones: trucking, strength, stiff arm, toughness, jumping, and injury. Every skill group has a max level of 10. Just visually, it's kind of given some NFL Street vibes. So once you upgrade one of these skill groups, it's going to upgrade everything within that. However, the caveat here is there are some skill caps, and some of these are lower than the max at 10. You can think of these.
That's similar to the way the thing works in Madden, I believe. When you upgrade a player and you upgrade towards a certain archetype, and then it'll boost up 2 or 3 attributes. This looks more like a more fleshed out version of that.
Once you upgrade one of these skill groups, it's going to upgrade everything within that. However, the caveat here is there are some skill caps, and some of these are lower than the max at 10. You can think of these as like a player's maximum potential, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
And these are going to vary by player, skill group, position.
Before he even get into that, I like that a lot because it's too cheesy, especially once your program is really good. If you can just recruit a power back with an 80 speed and he can be like a 95 speed by the time he leaves school. You know what I mean? It's like he can get faster, but he ain't gonna go from slow to just a world-class sprinter. That's kind of ridiculous.
And archetype. But we can see on a running back here, the route running is limited. Once a skill group has hit the cap, it can no longer be upgraded unless the coach has the architect archetype and the limitless or put a ring on it abilities. Limitless gives you a chance to increase a random skill cap when leveling up. Put a ring on it gives you a chance to increase the highest skill caps after winning conference or national championships. I really do think the skill caps and like limiting potential is one of the cooler things in this game, but I do like that you have the ability as a coach to really break it open and help players realize an even higher potential. And of course, we're going to be talking about abilities. They are plastered all over Dynasty mode. So if you didn't know this by now, players can have up to 5 physical abilities and 3 mental abilities.
Okay, so we have our what's it called? I ain't gonna lie, I don't remember, but the abilities that are in Madden. Now, I used to always say I felt like players in NCAA 14 had hidden abilities that the game just didn't point out to you, because I swear, dog, certain players were just good at certain things and their attributes might not really spell it out for you, but it just seemed like in certain situations that would always come through. So that was cool. I like the fact that it's now in the game for sure, because it really differentiates players, dog, further than just attributes. You know what I mean? Because that's how it is in real life. It's like it's a bunch of fast receivers in the league who run 4.3, and they're very different. You know, and in college as well. It's in football in general, you know. There's so many little things that differentiate these players. So I love having something like that.
Both physical and mental abilities have 4 tiers they can go up to: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Physical abilities are determined by the player's archetype, while mental abilities are position specific. While progressing, players will look to upgrade their physical abilities if they meet the rating requirements. So like every tier of a physical ability has an associated attribute requirement. So for example, in order to have the platinum workhorse ability for like power running backs, player must have a 95 toughness rating. We already said players cannot upgrade their mental abilities. So if a player does not come in as a freshman with a particular mental ability, there is no way for them to earn that ability through progression. That is specifically reserved for the physical abilities. We're going to start to pick up the pace here a little bit more. Going to talk about impact players. So what I think is cool about this, there is no limit to impact players on a team. So if you're just like an absolute powerhouse with 99s across the board, your entire team could be an impact player. And you're going to see that visually on the field and be immediately intimidated. However, every team will have at least one offensive and defensive impact player. So I've talked about wear and tear a lot. If you want to hear my in-depth thoughts about it, I talked about it in my last deep dive. Players can incur damage to specific body parts during gameplay. The more damage a body part is, the more it will impact their on-field performance. You get hit in the throwing arm, you're going to have throwing accuracy and throw power downgrade.
This is going to be the definitive Dynasty experience, bro. I ain't lying, dog. If this stuff works the way it's designed to work,
in your attributes. I just wanted to note here, you can also incur wear and tear damage during Super Sim. More severe damage takes longer to recover. So they said, for example, let's say the previous game your running back severely damages his right ankle and his left shoulder was only slightly damaged. The next week, you can expect his shoulder to be fully recovered because it was only slightly damaged. However, that severely damaged ankle will now only be slightly recovered.
So realistic.
So it's
I love
a nagging
that.
injury at this point. He's not out of the game. You can still play with him, obviously, but it's kind of like a lingering issue with him. So it's something you're going to have to monitor moving forward. This is how real life football works. You get banged up over the course of the season. That's really why I like wear and tear. Adds a little bit of roster management and realism to this football game, which I think is going to be cool. If it's tuned properly, of course. That's always the caveat, right? We don't know yet. But you could decide to sit him in an effort to allow him to get back to full health the following week, or you could play him at the risk of increasing how long it takes him to fully recover. In an effort to ensure that players are not disappearing in big-time games late in the season, they have set minimums that players will always recover to when advancing the week. I guess by the minimums, the worst it could be is like maybe slight impact to start the game, and then it's on you if it keeps happening and you keep ignoring it. And obviously, if a player gets hurt so bad that he can't play in the game, that's also a problem. But they've made it pretty easy to see when things are happening like that. But of course, if you do not like the system, they said there is a setting to turn it off. Let's talk about the greater college football world in Dynasty mode. So the first thing you'll notice, obviously, is the 12-team playoff. This is going to feel weird because we've never seen the 12-team playoff in real life before. So you're going to get to play it in-game before we see it happen. Red shirts are different now in the modern era. So like you can play up to 4 games with a player and still be eligible for a red shirt, just like in real life. And you can monitor this throughout the season to see how many games each player has played. And you can decide later if you want to red shirt them or not.
That's fine.
And this can be any 4 games. So if you want to play them the first game, you can do that. And then you can sit them for the rest of the year and play them in your bowl game if you want to. As long as
I really love that. Like, that's gonna give you a lot of options, bro. A lot of options. Because like we was just talking about with the wear and tear thing, if I get, say, a running back who gets that shoulder severely damaged, I might have a couple freshmen, right? Like, say I got 2 freshman running backs. I can spread them over a total of 8 games to get heavier usage to save my older running back and get that shoulder back right, and I could still redshirt them as long as I don't go over the 4 games. That's pretty fire.
Because you haven't played him in 4 games, he is still eligible for redshirting. But of course, you can also just redshirt an obvious guy if you have no intention of using him that year. Red shirts will be automatically applied if eligible. For scheduling, I'll try to consolidate a lot what they're talking about here.
Maybe he said this. I don't know if I missed it. Once I decide to redshirt him, is it over with? You know what I'm saying? Can I redshirt him and then be like, you know what, I want to play him? But as long as I don't play him over 4 games, I can redshirt him again? Or is it like all or nothing?
So basically, very important games like the Iron Bowl get filled in first because they want to make sure those big games are taken care of. And what's crazy here is they said they included as many future real-world games that have been announced as they could. So even all the way up to like 2030 between Bama and Notre Dame, they said that'll happen in-game. They said kickoff games like the Duke's Mayo Bowl Classic and the Vegas Classic are here as well. One thing that they said was not in the game, though, was like out-of-country games. So the games that happen in Ireland, they do not have like that stadium for teams. But how can we talk about Dynasty without Team Builder? They said you can import up to 16 Team Builder teams in a private online Dynasty. The commissioner will need to replace existing FBS schools, just like an NCAA 14, with the Team Builder teams that they want to add when setting up the Dynasty. Including Team Builder schools is only available at the start of a league, and they can only be used in private online dynasties. There's also individual and coach and coordinator awards you can win at the end of the season. They said conference, bowl, and national titles will contribute both to your coach's pedigree, but also your school's program tradition grade. For individual awards, of course, we got to start with the Heisman Trophy. They got the official naming rights for that, so that's cool. I think there's a lot of other awards that did not sign on those. We do have the Lou Groza, the Lombardi.
I thought that was one of the craziest things. Like, certain awards were just like, oh no, we're not gonna sign up. It's like, bruh, you're taking prestige away from your award and notoriety. For what reason? It doesn't make sense. Like, why wouldn't you want to be a part of this? Like, I don't want that. Once the Heisman was in, my little award, oh, we in. Heisman in, we in.
Party in the Unitas Golden Arm Award. They have the Broyles Award for the best coordinator in the country to go along with the Head Coach of the Year award. Just like past games, you're able to see the preseason and postseason All-American teams. For records and statistics, of course, they're going to be covering season stats, team stats, career stats, coaching stats. They're adding in conference season records, individual game, and career records there. Now, if you're like a team builder team, who knows what your records are? Does it start from 0? That'd be pretty neat. Or can you set your record yourself? We don't know yet. One cool little thing that they did add here is helmet stickers. What I do find the most interesting thing about this, though, is the helmet stickers. They populate the helmet based on the player's quality of play. So the better he plays, the more helmet sticker he gets.
It's just like real life.
Work with schools to make sure they populate the helmet as they would for a team in real life. General things they talk about here. Your dynasty can last up to 30 seasons. You can have up to 32 users in online dynasty, 1 user per school, so you can't have 2 people using the same team. And we already established the commissioner is in charge of the custom scheduling, and the commissioner is also in charge of settings for dynasty and advancing. You can transfer the user, you can force a win, and the number of times a game is played is going to be displayed for everybody. If it takes you 30 tries to beat the CPU, they're going to know that and they're going to roast you. Let's talk conference realignment and custom conferences. One thing they did for teams, and you can have in college football revamped, the patch would not update. So when you'd bring like James Madison, it will update the patch on the jersey deep dive by saying the next one that you're going to see is the Road to Glory deep dive, which I am also extreme, and it will update that, which I think is a nice little touch. And they wrapped up this Dynasty deep dive by saying the next one that you're going to see is the Road to Glory deep dive, which I am also extremely excited for. Like I said, Chad, Ben, and everybody who worked on Dynasty, it's clear that they had a lot of passion for this game. It's cool that you can see some inspiration from a lot of different games like NCAA 14 and other games before that as well. It seems like they mixed and matched, made the best version of that possible, and added in modern elements on top of it, which makes me very excited to try out this game and see if it sticks the landing. But you form your own opinion. This is not a review. This is just me giving you information. All
right, man. Shout out to NTE. Like, phenomenal video. Dude went over every damn thing. That was a long ass video, bro. After checking that out, Dynasty mode seems like it's not gonna miss nothing. Like, bro, I'm really looking forward to diving into this. Like, it's, I'm still trying to measure my enthusiasm because you gotta play the game. Like, you have to play the in the wild version of the game. But as far as the thought and everything that they trying to do with this game, bro, it really, really, really looks fire. I can't wait to get it going. I can't wait to get my Dynasty going. Like I said, I'm going to be uploading on the FlemLo remastered channel. I've been putting some things together, kind of cooking up and deciding how I want to approach it. And I got some great ideas. Things are not finalized yet, but the game is coming fast, so I'm gonna have to be ready, you know what I'm saying, when the game is ready. But yeah, my thoughts on everything that we've seen so far, bro, it looks amazing. Like, it really do. It really does look amazing. It's just a few more weeks, dog. We all gonna have our hands on this game. And this might be the definitive college game. Like, this actually, in 2024, looks like the best version of an all-time great game series. If that does turn out to be true, man, I never thought I'd see the day. But appreciate y'all for chilling with me, bro. Go and check out NTE's video if you want to watch the whole thing, or if you just want to go show him some love for putting that thing together. Y'all tell me what you think, man. What's your excitement level and what's your concern level? You know what I'm saying? Talk to me. I'm not gonna lie, I don't see a ton of things to be like overly concerned about. Like, I mean, I got a couple little questions here or there, but none of those things feel like they're really make or break. Like, this game seemed fire, man. This might be the one.